Let's move over to the pseudo first line, and then we'll go over to defense after that. But the first line yesterday, everybody wanted to know all offseason long, outside of the Crosby contract, which we've talked about for 4 straight days, so we won't get into it. Who's playing next to Sidney Crosby? For the first time in 8 years, it's not Jake Guentzel. So who is going to fill that role? Well, the answer on day one, at least, which again, I've stressed it enough. Anthony Beauvillier is the name that's there. So it's Beauvillier, Crosby, and Brian Rust. Horwat, what are you doing with this line?
Whenever the Penguins acquired Beauvillier, this was a line that was tossed out a couple of times just because Anthony Beauvillier could be one of those guys that floats all over the lineup, and pinning him on the first line is a fair option as well. So I don't know if I want to necessarily see it, but you can likely I don't want to say get used to it, but you'll see it for a little bit longer. I think it'll last through this first week at camp, might even last into a preseason game or two. That's if Sid plays any preseason games.
True.
But it's something to definitely it's definitely something to watch out for and get used to, I guess, for the time being. I don't see it starting in the season, but for now, it's going to be that chemistry building time for Sid and Beauvillier.
Yeah, we led off this segment talking about, why this is the time of year where you don't overly exaggerate who's on whose line because, last 2 years, the person that's played next to Crosby in the opening day of training camp combined have played for 13 minutes with Sidney Crosby. But this is a little different. This one's different in the sense that this was a player that is expected to potentially play with Crosby at some point this season. And he is on that line on the first day of training camp, especially in a slot where Crosby hasn't had a different winger in 8 years. So maybe this is something that does stick. They could do some good things if Beauvillier has a resurgence and plays like he did when he was next to Matt Barzal all those years over in New York. But at the same time, this is the least exciting option for Crosby's left wing. You have McGroarty, who we've talked about. You could throw up Bunting. You could move, Raquel to the off wing and have him play with Crosby. That has been exciting in the past. In fact, that is the reason that Raquel had 28 goals 2 years ago. Beauvillier is probably the least exciting of the group. I would probably, personal preference, rather see Drew O'Connor start the season up there and give him the opportunity to build on what he had. So for that reason, I'm going to shut it down, and I'm going to say, I know we're not going to leave this one simply in the first week of training camp. I know that this is always going to be an option that the Penguins might go to, but, I would rather start off with something else. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Beauvillier does bounce back, and he looks great, and he looks even better than he did with the Islanders, and he looks like he finally landed in the right spot after bouncing around North America like a pinball machine for the last 18 months. But I think that of the options and of the lines, this one is the most likely to make it to October 9th intact, but also this is the one that I think I want to see the least make it to October 9th intact. But that's just because I have so many questions about what Anthony Beauvillier is going to be this year.
And that's understandable. It's just one of those situations where you look at it as, what did I call him? The Dom Simone almost. You know he doesn't necessarily have the skill to play on the first line. But if something clicks between Sid and him, don't be shocked.
Yeah, he could be the Dom Simone, or Penguins fans would rather him turn into the Pascal Dupuis, to be completely honest.